As I mentioned in the last segment, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced today that his country is pulling back from its New START treaty with the United States. This treaty, originally signed in 2010, limits the nuclear arsenal for both the United States and Russia. Now, combined, the two superpowers possess more than 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. So, what will this mean in practice? Where is this leading us? Joining me now to discuss this and more is FRC's Executive Vice President, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who spent the last 4 years of his 36-year military career serving as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence at the Pentagon. He was also one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force. General, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony. It's always good to be with you.
Let me first get your reaction to President Biden's visit to Ukraine.
You know, I am one who believes that that was a good move on his part. I think it's long overdue, but I think that he did a good thing by going there and publicly speaking with President Zelensky. And I think that the only downside of this thing is that he just waited too long.
Is this provoking Vladimir Putin with his announcement today that would have Russia step back from the New START treaty?
Well, you need to understand that this is serious. I mean, we need to take it seriously because it is one of the treaties, but it's also a treaty that Putin hasn't been abiding by for a number of years. One of the stipulations in that treaty when it was ratified was that the Western nations would be able to go and inspect the Russian facilities and stockpiles, and that Russia would be able to do the same. They have not let U.S. forces or any NATO forces in there to do this for a number of years. So they haven't been abiding by this. So it's no surprise to me that he did this. And I think Secretary Blinken actually had a very good thought today. And as he said, this shows that Vladimir Putin is not preparing for peace. He is preparing for an extended war.
What do these treaties mean? I mean, if you just pull back from it, I mean, what are the ramifications or the consequences for saying, hey, we're not going to abide by it, we're just walking away from it? Are there any?
Well, no, there really aren't any, other than if the nations that are on the side that we're on, let's say, for example, they still have the option of imposing sanctions and doing other things that are non-kinetic, so to speak. But generally speaking, these nations are supposed to enforce these treaties. It's like the JCPOA with the Iranians. They have been cheating on that ever since it started. And God bless Donald Trump when he pulled out of it, realizing that we were the only ones that were really prepared to live up to it on our side, at least. So I don't think that there's any enforcement to this that we could put our finger on right now.
So just to be sure that I'm clear, you're saying this really doesn't change much because they weren't abiding by it before. And so it just says that, hey, this is another signal that they're in this for the long haul to engage in military behavior there in Europe.
Yeah, and keep in mind, when the war started, when Putin crossed the line of departure and went into Ukraine, remember he had been in Belarus practicing a nuclear scenario, nuclear training scenario. And every time he's been jammed, he has come out with the threat of using a nuclear weapon. And I think that this act is one more propaganda thing for him to try and have the West, particularly our administration, buckle to them and do what they want us to do, which is stop supplying the Ukrainians with weapons and materiel.
How significant do you think the threat of nuclear conflict with the United States and Russia is?
At this point, I don't think it's very high. I really don't think it's very high. That could change. It depends on what happens, I think, in the internal politics of Russia and how much they squeeze Putin. You know, Putin, any way you look at it, I think Putin is done when this is all over with. I think he's done. And Russian people are already rising up. They have been for months. And I think that if he gets enough pressure on him that he just really doesn't, is not thinking straight, and if it's true that he is sick, that he has some kind of debilitating long-term illness, then I think it's possible that he could use a nuclear weapon on one of our allies, which would immediately trigger an Article 5 response. And there are 3 nuclear countries sitting on his border right now. That's the U.S., France, and Britain, and it would be a game changer, and nobody wins. Nobody wins.
Let me switch gears just a little bit. Something else you know quite a bit about. The president, vice president as well, earlier last week, saying that Russia has engaged in crimes against humanity. Where do you think that might lead? Does that make Russia more, and Putin in particular, desperate, knowing that he'll have to face the music?
Well, yeah, but see, who enforces that? Who makes sure that Putin stands before a tribunal to account for his war crimes? I mean, that's what they are. They're war crimes. And they are covered by previous treaties. And I don't think that Putin, until he has actually left office, I don't think that Putin is going to be held accountable on this. There'll be a lot of rhetoric about it. There'll be a lot of investigations. There already are. But I don't think that anybody will be able to get to him until he is out of power. And I do believe that this is the end of Putin when this whole war is over with, or when the people finally reach a point where they're going to overthrow him.
Will the United States have the wherewithal and the determination to follow through on these war crimes?
Well, yeah, I ran a war crime task force back in the Balkans after the Balkans War, and yeah, we rounded up a lot of people. We had an international force there. I had 5 nations that were going after these people, but we did. The U.S. led that effort, and we put the majority of the troops on the ground to do it. And we went in and captured, and some surrendered, but we captured and took surrenders from people that were guilty of war crimes, and we sent them to The Hague. So yes, the U.S. has a history of doing it.
All right, General Jerry Boykin, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.